Owning a home has always been key to the American dream. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, home ownership is a pillar of wealth building for most families, a source of wealth that can be passed down to future generations.
Having the ability to purchase a home and live where one chooses is, should be a fundamental right.
As African Americans moved to Wisconsin in large numbers after World War II, they entered a segregated housing market.
When we think about racism, when we think about Jim Crow, we have a tendency to focus on the South when it was universal throughout the United States.
Including here in Wisconsin, where starting around 1900, racism was built into home ownership.
Racially restrictive covenants were clauses that were inserted into property deeds that prevented people who were not white from owning, buying, or occupying property.
Ann Bonds and Derek Hanley are professors at UW-Milwaukee, where they map old covenants in the city of Milwaukee and its surrounding suburbs.
By 1928, about half of all homes that were owned by white people in the United States had some sort of a racially restrictive covenant.
Often, restrictive covenants had sweeping language. Derek Handley reads this one from Wauwatosa.
Number 8, ownership and occupancy by members of white race only. No lot in said subdivision shall be conveyed or leased to or occupied by any person who is not a member of the white race. This prohibition is not intended to include domestic servants while employed by an owner or occupant of any such lot. So now African Americans have limited areas in which they can live, in which they can spread. And so now they're going to be crowded into one area.
Black people who come during the Great Migration are already coming to a space that has a history of anti-Blackness, that has a history of racism. These are the people who are shaping the texture of your life.
Dr. Christy Clark Pujara, a UW-Madison history professor, also works with the Madison organization Nehemiah. She's an instructor in its Justified Anger, Black History for a New Day course. The 9-week course teaches the community about race, history, and justice.
Housing is critical because this idea of being able to pay the same amount month after month for 30 years with little to no money down transformed American life.
While restrictive covenants were made unenforceable by a 1948 Supreme Court ruling, they continued to be added to property deeds.
After 1948, we have examples of deeds in the 1950s, and the latest one we found so far is 1962.
Even though covenants fell out of use in the 60s, other long-standing tools of racial segregation, like redlining, continued to carve up neighborhoods.
The term redlining comes from a set of maps that were drawn by the federal government.
Reggie Jackson educates people about diversity. He says that the redlining maps weren't common knowledge.
They were, for the most part, secretive maps. Nobody really knew they existed, other than bankers and some realtors.
And so the Homeowners Loan Corporation in 1933 and the Federal Housing Administration in 1934 adopted a mechanism where they drew lines on a map.
UW-Madison professor Kurt Paulson is a historian of urban planning.
What redlining said was who could get a mortgage refinanced.
Redlining maps, like this one drawn for Milwaukee in 1938, divided cities into 4 grades. Green areas were considered the best place for banks to invest in, while red areas were deemed hazardous and not worthy of additional investment.
One of the criteria that the FHA and the Homeowners Loan Corporation used was the presence of what they call, quote, inharmonious racial groups.
Neighborhoods where black people live were always redlined. And so what that meant was it was exceptionally difficult to become a person who could get a traditional bank mortgage to purchase a home or a business property.
What that meant was that a black person, if they moved into a yellow or a blue zone, would change that neighborhood to a red zone. And all of a sudden that white person's property would lose huge value.
UW Law School professor Ian Main says the patterns of segregation we see today stem from these policies.
So a black person became a threat to white wealth, and it created hyper-segregation.
And it not only created disinvestment in older urban neighborhoods, It facilitated suburban development.
Because redlining maps sent government subsidies to the suburbs, urban communities were left with old housing and high prices.
In many cases, Black people in deteriorating in urban neighborhoods were paying more in rent than white families were paying in the suburbs.
That means that blacks have been left out of the ability to build generational wealth.
What you have is basically a system of state-sanctioned apartheid.
And I remember as a kid, hanging out here, riding my bike or walking, and I never saw white people because everybody in the neighborhood was black. I didn't really understand it when I was a kid. I just said, it's just the way it is.
Reggie Jackson has lived in Milwaukee for most of his life and takes people on segregation tours of the city. We joined him to see the lines of segregation up close.
One of the best ways to see the segregation in Milwaukee is to visibly just drive along one of our main streets, North Avenue.
He says the Milwaukee River is one of the largest invisible borders.
Once you cross from the west to the east across the river, you know that you're not going to see a residential area that has anything other than white people in it for the most part. Developers not trying to build homes in this part of town. It's a really a sad situation to me.
Jackson says that in order to restore black neighborhoods in Milwaukee, investments in jobs and affordable homes are a must.
Clearly missing is the fact that people can't afford to become homeowners. People aren't making enough money.
But Jackson says that in order to capture investment for the future, we have to look at how we got here.
Ours is a complicated history, and we can't hide from it. We have to understand it. I think we have to learn from it, and we have to grow from it.
People here are suffering now. What do you want to do about it now? What are you going to do about it now?
How many homes do you have available now?
Bulldozers rolled into Milwaukee in the 1960s, leveling black neighborhoods in the name of urban renewal. The projects often raised successful black neighborhoods, like Bronzeville in downtown Milwaukee.
Well, you had homes with families and with kids, and we were all just playing around.
Teresa Garrison has lived in the Bronzeville community for 70 years.
So I'd say it was family-oriented, and everybody knew everybody.
Bronzeville enjoyed a flourishing business district in the early 1960s, from banks to movie theaters to grocery stores.
It was just a booming shopping center.
But in the mid-1960s, the federal government started giving grants for cities to update infrastructure. The goal of urban renewal was to construct new housing and modern interstates. Those projects often destroyed black neighborhoods in the process.
Fred Dura and his family have lived in this house for 8 years, but they live in the K3 urban renewal area, and they have to move now. There are 13 of them, and they are black and poor, so they won't be able to find a decent home on their own.
As far as urban renewal, I'll just say it was urban tragedies.
In just 8 years between 1960 and 1968, more than 7,500 homes and businesses were demolished in Milwaukee. Interstate 43 was the largest and most visible urban renewal project in Milwaukee and was built directly through Bronzeville.
The addition of I-43 decimated the neighborhood.
Friendships that were very close to having a family connection were disrupted and destroyed, and a lot of families never recovered.
Elmer Moore Jr. and Rennell Washington play critical roles in the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority.
What does that do to everyone else's sense of security? I wouldn't be able to sleep that night thinking, what are they going to do to my home next?
Everybody deserves to have a house.
When they start, tearing the community apart, there was nothing to do. You didn't have anything.
The black community was now facing 3 forms of discrimination at once. Restrictive covenants prohibited them from living in certain areas, redlining prevented them from getting mortgages, and urban renewal destroyed their neighborhoods.
Black households that were displaced by highways and urban renewal had limited housing options in the city because of discrimination and exclusionary zoning in the suburbs.
Kurt Paulson is a historian of urban planning at UW-Madison who says decades of discrimination built to massive protest.
No surprise that you get significant political pushback and rebellion amongst African Americans in disinvested neighborhoods.
We tend to think about the civil rights movement like the institution of slavery as something that is uniquely Southern, and it was not.
Dr. Christy Clark Pujara, a UW-Madison history professor, also works with the Madison organization Nehemiah. She's an instructor in its Justified Anger, Black History for a New Day course. The 9-week course teaches the community about race, history, and justice.
You can just look at the civil rights struggle for open housing, for instance, in Milwaukee.
The pushback in Milwaukee started in the 1960s when Vel Phillips was elected to the city council. Phillips was both the first woman and the first Black person elected to a city office. She led the charge to desegregate Milwaukee's housing.
These cats are just too dumb, just too dumb to know when they have something going for them.
And they argued in favor of reinvestment in Black neighborhoods, but also what we today would call fair housing or open housing.
Fair housing is the idea that discrimination of any kind in the sale or rental of housing should be prohibited. When Phillips first introduced her fair housing ordinance in 1962, the rest of the council overwhelmingly rejected it.
It was one of the first proposed in the country, and it went down to defeat 18-1. Only Vel Phillips voted for it.
Y'all have done this for over 200 years, telling us what felt good for us.
Over the next 4 years, the ordinance was shot down 4 more times, each time by the 18-1 margin. By the summer of 1967, Milwaukee reached its boiling point. A group of young Black activists decided to rally their community around a common goal. Their mindset:
we're going to march and demand that the local government, the city of Milwaukee, passes a fair housing ordinance that has some teeth to it.
Reggie Jackson is a community leader in Milwaukee.
So they marched for 200 consecutive days. The first 2 days they marched, they were met crossing this bridge in Milwaukee called the 16th Street Viaduct, which separated the north side from the south side. They were met by an angry crowd of thousands of white people throwing bricks and bottles and bags of feces.
Despite the angry white crowds, protesters kept up the pressure.
Anybody that knows anything about the weather in Milwaukee, marching in December, January, February, when it's bitterly cold, snow, blizzards, all that stuff, ice storms, they continue to march.
Protests continued until March 1968. Less than a month later, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis. As unrest grew after the murder of Dr. King, the federal government felt pressure to pass an open housing law.
The federal government finally passed the Federal Fair Housing Act a week after Dr. King's assassination.
But that's after 40 years of segregation. And a law prohibiting discrimination does not address the deep structure of segregation that was already built into the urban landscape.
As an expert on the deep and lasting scars of discrimination and forced segregation, Clark Pujara says understanding that past is critical to working towards a better future.
So now we're in a situation where things are very lopsided. But we can address them as a society if we choose to.
Historical wrongs like blatant housing discrimination in Wisconsin.
And so evident and fearless positive.
The Federal Fair Housing Act is supposed to protect renters or buyers from discrimination based on a number of protected classes, including race. However, discrimination in the housing market has persisted in the 55 years since it became law.
Is as or more prevalent today than it has been in the past.
The discrimination is a reality. It's not hypothetical, it's not theoretical, it still happens. It's just more subtle.
These two people, one white and one Black, test for discrimination in housing as a part of Wisconsin's Fair Housing Council, a nonprofit that ensures realtors and landlords follow the law. They have been made anonymous to ensure they can continue to test.
That
I'm not in Granby Street. Are you sorry? I'm not in Granby Street.
This 1961 film was recorded in Madison at the height of segregation, but it was hidden by the University of Wisconsin and never shown to the public until 2021. Flash forward to today.
In today's time, it's probably more subtle, but they've already concluded that they're not going to rent you the apartment.
The two testers from the Fair Housing Council recently toured the same apartment building and found discrimination based on race.
I went to an apartment building.
I asked if a unit was available October. They said nothing was available.
You know, they did show me more than one apartment, so they were very, very eager to show me around.
However, the black tester had a different experience.
But I never saw the actual unit because it wasn't available.
One thing I remember clearly about this is that they were just so engaging, and they repeated like 2 or 3 times over, you know, the amenities that they had.
And then the person made a slip up and said, well, there was something available in October, but that's gone now. And so then you become aware of like what's going on in the back of your mind.
On top of discrimination by landlords, lenders like Associated Bank in Milwaukee, Racine, and Kenosha were part of a recent $200 million redlining settlement. A federal complaint in the case alleged the denial of mortgages to Black and Hispanic applicants.
Many banks have been caught with their hands in the cookie jar, giving Black and Latino borrowers different loans than they give whites.
Reggie Jackson educates people about diversity. Jackson noted that despite the Fair Housing Act, the Black homeownership rate has not improved much since 1968. Rennell Washington says that shuts Black families out of the ability to create generational wealth.
Housing is the cornerstone to the beginning of a financial journey.
There have been laws and policies that created some of the disinvestment, the plight, and the wrong that we're experiencing today. Even if those laws were changed 50 years ago, the consequences of them are still absolutely present.
Elmer Moore Jr. and Rennell Washington play critical roles in the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority.
It's about trying our best, honestly, to correct some historical wrongs.
The duo cares deeply about evening historical gaps caused by housing discrimination. They provide affordable loans, rental units, and mortgages to low-income individuals. Plus, they invest in future housing or business projects.
There's 147,000 families who have been able to buy homes across the state because of the mortgages WHEDA made available. And they might not have otherwise been able to afford those things.
Making really intentional decisions to spur affordable housing development in our inner city communities is one of the ones that we definitely have a lens on.
That's sequestering some resources and intentionally investing in Black communities is the right thing to do.
WHEDA has funded developments in Milwaukee's Bronzeville neighborhood, including the Griot, which fashioned apartments out of an old schoolhouse.
It brought new businesses. It obviously brought new residents. It also does things like plants new trees.
Housing is that cornerstone, and from that, I can have conversations about aspiring to be an entrepreneur.
Building equity in your house can spur the creation of a second way to build wealth, your own business. And while Black-owned businesses have seen an uptick in recent years, there is still a large disparity between Black and white-owned businesses in Wisconsin.
And our work does what lots of folks don't do primarily, is to center the needs of Black women.
Sabrina Madison is the founder of the nonprofit Progress Center for Black Women in Madison.
The first level that I really want to see is Black folks having more power in their pockets. And I always go with the fact, Black women in Dane County on average in 2016 earned 57 cents on every dollar made by white men. I wanted to give Black women another option to be successful.
To help close the gap, the Progress Center provides Black women with programming that includes financial health, professional development, and entrepreneurship.
Oftentimes, programming is very piecemeal, where you got to go to one side of town for this, you got to go somewhere for that, you got to wait on a phone call for this other thing. And we wanted to sort of like center all of your needs in one space.
Madison says her foundation has helped hundreds of women create their own business or secure a better job.
I absolutely want to see the rest of the state, but more importantly, Madison and Milwaukee, extend its Black leaders through wealth creation, because with wealth, you have more power.
Despite the work of WIDA and the Progress Center, Madison says everyone has to buy in to make Wisconsin a more equitable place.
So these visions that Black folks have for their lives as Wisconsinites, because we too are from Wisconsin and we too live here, that you want to also be part of this vision and see this vision expanded.
While that vision might take years to be realized, Madison says the work starts today. For Here and Now, I'm Nathan Denzine.